Muslim world of Al-Walid Center for the Study of Islam in the Muslim world, which is a research and teaching center under the Department of Islamic and Middle Eastern Studies here at the University of Edinburgh. My colleagues also, Tom and Mona, are here, and thank you for joining, Julia, and everyone for joining. I'm honored to be welcoming Dr. Kim Chitwood as our guest speaker today to speak about his new book, which is titled Borícua, and it's on the experiences of Puerto Rican Muslims in Puerto Rico and the USA, and Latinx Muslims as well. And Ken and I met 4 years ago when I was teaching a course called Regional Perspectives in a Globalized Muslim World. And he came to speak about his other book, which was a general introduction to Muslims in Latin America as a whole. And it was a very interesting experience because for our students who are used to a Middle Eastern centered or Arab centered Islam, to look beyond those dimensions and to look beyond the center to these maybe peripheries, people would argue, but we would argue that we should look at Islam as a globalized religion. So the Americas are as important as other parts of the Muslim world. Dr. Chitwood is also a lecturer of history. Yeah. This is a postdoctoral researcher and lecturer at the Department of the Study of Religion at Bayreuth University in Germany. And he's also affiliate of the University of Southern California Center for Religion and Civic Culture. He's also a journalist on his own right, so you can also follow what he writes online. Many of it is really interesting stories about, like the last ones I read were about migrants trying to cross the Mexico-US border and the work of some Muslim charities that run there, which are really interesting when you think about the dynamics of migration beyond borders in today's world. So today, Dr. Chitwood would speak for about 20 to 25 minutes about the book. And then I had the pleasure to read the book, and we'll have a discussion about it, but also please prepare questions if you have any about the topic or the general discussion on anything related to the book. Thanks again for joining us, and I'll leave the floor to you, Ken.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you for, if you're here in Edinburgh, if you're online, I don't know what you've had to make your way through, maybe from the living room to the office, but here you've had to make it through some fairly nasty weather that's been going on, so I appreciate you coming out in the midst of a busy season and time. This last semester in Bayreuth, I've been teaching a course on religion in the Caribbean, and I promised my students that teaching this in the winter semester was a way to transport them out of the horrendous weather in Germany and to the Caribbean, where it is far warmer and perhaps more enjoyable if you like warm weather and those types of things. I can't promise the same today because we're going to be starting in New Jersey rather than in the Caribbean. We will get to the Caribbean, I promise. But I want to take you first to Union City, New Jersey, where walking along Bergen Line Avenue there, one gets a sense why numerous towns with populations of up to 90% Latino or Latinx are sometimes referred to as Havana on the Hudson. Here, just west of the Lincoln Tunnel and with a view to the gleaming mass of Midtown Manhattan, the Americas come together with remnants left from previous European, Middle Eastern, and Asian migrations. Flags from Puerto Rico, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic hang proudly alongside that of the United States. There's a lot more US flags on this day. This was right around July 4th. And so there was lots of US flags put up by the city. But there are also numerous privately operated hail and ride minibuses traveling to points in Jersey City, Newark, or La Ciudad into Manhattan. Signage and language here in this part of the city are often bilingual. The North Hudson Islamic Education Center, or NHIEC, home to a large number of Latinx Muslims, lies directly off Bergen Line Avenue. Journalist, activist, and self-described proud Puerto Rican Muslima, Wendy Diaz, said the NHIEC acts as a significant node and a centrifugal hub in the broader Latinx Muslim landscape. Writing, NHIEC is home to one of the largest Latino Muslim communities in the nation and has been catering to their growing needs by providing simultaneous Friday sermon translations and interpretations, an annual Hispanic Muslim Day for the past 2 decades, and continuous educational programs specially geared towards Spanish speakers and new Muslims of Hispanic heritage, many of them Puerto Rican. Lebron is one such Puerto Rican Muslim. On a muggy late May afternoon, I met up with Lebron down the road at Noches de Colombia, a restaurant serving pan-Latin American fare. As the restaurant's windows dripped with humidity, we discussed his recent comments on The Dean Show, a popular YouTube program. He was there responding to disparaging comments toward Muslims tweeted by the then Miss Puerto Rico, Destiny Vélez. And Lebron said she would be welcomed by the Muslim community, but needed to show some Borícua pride first. If she's a true Puerto Rican, true to Puerto Rican pride, proud of her culture, proud of where she came from, he said, then I'd ask her to go back, read about how Puerto Rico came about being the country that it is now only after being colonized. Pushing back on those who frame Puerto Rico as a quote-unquote Christian nation, Lebron talked about the thousands of words that Spanish shares with Arabic, the entanglement of Puerto Rican culture with Southwest Asian and North African cultures, and referencing the popular music of Puerto Rico, Lebron claimed even La Bamba has Muslim roots. Looking at the camera, he challenged Miss Puerto Rico to see how our people are connected to Islam, especially in and through our Borícua culture. As we finished our breakfast and continued our conversation, Lebron also told me about his personal journey to Islam in the 1990s. He meandered his way through gang life before finding his way to a meeting of the Universal Zulu Nation, an international hip-hop awareness group formed and formerly headed by artist Africa Bambaataa. As part of their mission to inspire solidarity and what they called ghetto transformation, many members of the Nation of Islam joined the meetings in the 1980s and 1990s as well. Through contacts in the Zulu Nation, Lebron talked with the Nations of Gods and Earths, or Five Percenters, a breakoff group from the NOI, and members of an all-Latinx and particularly Puerto Rican community in El Barrio, or in Spanish Harlem, called Alianza Islamica, the first Latinx Muslim organization in the US, which was founded in 1987. Lebron took the Shahada in 1998, and by 2001 was studying in Medina, Saudi Arabia. Reflecting on his story and that of other Puerto Rican Muslims like him, Lebron said, "You could call Puerto Rican Muslims the original gangsters of Latino Islam. Literally, we started in gangs, and then we started the Latino Muslim community." In his poem, American, Pato Laviera captures the pride and pain of biculturalism, bilingualism, and the borderlands experience of New Yorkers like Lebron and other Puerto Ricans living in the continental US. He writes, "We gave birth to a new generation, American. It includes everything imaginable, you name it, we got it, society. We gave birth to a new generation. American salutes all folklores, European, Indian, Black, Spanish, and anything else compatible. And I dream to take the accent from the altercation." Here, Laviera depicts how Puerto Ricans develop the skills, sensibility, and creativity to shape and reshape new identifications and communities from the marginalized mix that defines their multiracial, intersectional, and bifurcated existence. In other words, his poem wrestles with questions of being and becoming, as well as the lingering sense of estrangement that being American entails, belonging neither fully here nor there in one's homeland or adopted home. As Puerto Ricans often say, they are ni de aquí ni de allá, neither from here nor there. Yet, Laviera also finds hope in this imposed but invented in-betweenness. By invoking the title American and placing the accent on the I in Borícua, I draw on Laviera's imagery to highlight Puerto Rican Muslims' similar sense of never quite feeling at home, even as they draw from various lineages to reconcile their multiple heritages and marginalizations. This sentiment was common among the American Muslims I encountered, people who are quadruply minoritized, Muslims among Puerto Ricans among Muslims, and both Muslim and Puerto Rican in the context of American empire. Thus, this book explores how Puerto Rican converts to Islam navigate difference and transform marginalization into new forms of belonging that reshape what it means to be Puerto Rican, Muslim, and American at the same time. Though marginalized within each community they claim, they also help create and redefine those communities. Or in Laviera's words, their story is one of reproducing a broader answer to marginality, to the accent of altercation, forging creativity, connection, and a sense of co-becoming from the tension. While centered on Puerto Rican converts, this story ultimately speaks to how people across the world navigate diversity and displacement in the late modern world. American Muslims are hardly alone in feeling unmoored amid our world's overlapping borderlands, literal and figurative, individual and social. Late modernity itself is marked by the intersecting legacies of colonial exploitation, the global flows of neoliberal capitalism, the rise of vast cosmopolitan metroplexes, border and immigration regimes built on a false sense of identitarian control, and the networks of communication, travel, trade, and ideology that link them. In such a world, layers upon layers of peoples, cultures, histories, and practices constantly meet, clash, and coalesce, forming new combinations and coalitions in the struggle for social, cultural, and political belonging and capital. To illustrate these dynamics, I examine how Puerto Rican Muslims navigate diversity and difference from positions of marginalization through four key lines of inquiry. First, the contested negotiation of authenticity. Puerto Rican Muslims often face skepticism about how their authenticity is questioned from both Muslims and fellow Borícua. Doubts come not only from family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers, but also from academic frameworks that narrowly define Puerto Ricanness or link Muslim identity to specific geographies, ethnicities, or practices. Second, they also contend with colonial legacies. Their identifications are shaped by the dual forces of US colonization and the broader reach of American empire at home and abroad. These overlapping legacies continue to influence how Puerto Rican Muslims see themselves and are seen by others. Third, the contingent nature of everyday cosmopolitanism. Rather than treating cosmopolitanism as a lofty moral or political ideal, I frame it in this book as a lived everyday process. In doing so, I suggest that to understand the assemblages of Islamic late modernity, we must move beyond idealized notions of cosmopolitanism as a moral or political ethic and focus instead on cosmopolitanization, the social processes through which people encounter and adapt to diversity and difference in the context of everyday life. Much of the scholarship on Muslim cosmopolitanism celebrates individuals or institutions or ideologies that embody a supposed cosmopolitan ideal. Yet the conceptual ambiguity often found around what constitutes Muslim cosmopolitanism reduces this to the familiar good Muslim and bad Muslim binary, where good Muslims are deemed cosmopolitan according to predominantly Western philosophies and narratives, while bad Muslims are cast as anti-cosmopolitan, such as in the work of prominent cosmopolitan theorists Kwame Appiah and Ulrich Beck. Following sociological and anthropological approaches to cosmopolitanization, I instead treat cosmopolitanism as a social reality, often messy and uneven, that must be explored and not idealized. From this point of view, cosmopolitanism becomes less about feeling at home anywhere in the world than about feeling increasingly unsettled, even in places we assume to be home. This discomfort reveals the constitutive tensions of cosmopolitan life. As identifications and affiliations evolve, complexity multiplies, uncertainty deepens, and new intersections emerge. Fourth, I investigate finding and forming intersectional solidarities. Examining the intersectional precarity of American Muslim lives illuminates the overlapping dynamics of coloniality, cosmopolitanism, and subalterity in the late modern world. In their lives, the frictions produced by colonialism and neocolonialism are not merely endured, they are reworked, spit out in malice, as Laviera put it, and remixed into forms of resistance and solidarity. Through these solidarities, Puerto Rican reverts transform the margins of the empire into sites of empowerment, envisioning and giving voice to potentially more just and inclusive futures. With that basis, the question became how to study such a situation and sociality. But first, some demographic orientation. As you can see here, the Puerto Rican Muslim community is relatively small. There were an estimated 3,500 to 5,000 Muslims on the archipelago of Puerto Rico pre-Hurricane Maria, so pre-2017. There's been massive outmigration from the archipelago since that event and the ongoing effects thereof. And so it's hard to know just how many Muslims are there. Even among those Muslims in the archipelago, roughly 80 to 90% are Palestinian. And so there's a very small convert community that's there, and then Muslims from other places and other heritages. But there are an estimated 11,000 to 15,000 Puerto Rican Muslims in the United States, based on a survey of Latino Muslims across the United States performed back in 2016 and 17. This is roughly the same as the portion of Puerto Ricans to Latino immigrants in the United States. They make up about 25% of the Latino community in the US, and they're about 25% of the Latino Muslim community as well. There are overlapping junctures or coyunturas of history that Caro Resto has looked at that have led to the present Puerto Rican Muslim community. I have an entire chapter about that in the book that breaks down these 4 different periods and how Puerto Rican Muslims draw on and remember them. I'm going to skip over that today and get into some of the other content of the chapters. But if you have any questions about these, I invite you to ask them later. But given Puerto Rican Muslims' geographic dispersion, I relied on a multi-local ethnographic approach to trace connections, associations, and relationships across space, rather than focusing on any single location. And it looks like I had some fun doing it as well. The stories in this book emerge from 111 semi-structured relational interviews and extensive participation and observation conducted across Texas, Puerto Rico, New York, New Jersey, Florida, supplemented by digital ethnography and follow-up online interviews during COVID-19. You can see some of the individuals I had the opportunity to engage with, whether that's Mohammed at the San Juan Convention Center for a big Al-Fitr celebration there, or we have here a Puerto Rican Muslim ninja from Staten Island. That's how he self-identified. One of the most fun interviews I had. I got to spend the entire day with him, and then he offered me a piece of pumpkin pie. It was shortly before Thanksgiving, and I was interviewing him, and I fell asleep on his couch. And he woke me up very gently later on, saying, "You must be tired from me talking all day," and it was true. But also Hazel Gomez, who was a regular interlocutor along the way. We have yet to meet in person. We've only interacted online, and yet you'll see she figures into the book multiple times and has her own space and quotes in the epilogue as well. But to reference the first marginalization that Puerto Rican Muslims experience, what I found through these various encounters and interviews is that, above all, Puerto Rican Muslims are often treated as foreigners in a society where they consider home, but where Islam is not seen as a primary identity referent. Thus, the embodiment of Islam becomes a frequent point of contestation for them, requiring converts to continually negotiate and reformulate their responses both on the island and in the diaspora. Jennifer Matarena Taylor's film, New Muslim Cool, illustrates this through the story of Puerto Rican rapper Hamza Perez, converted to Islam amid post-9/11 surveillance, prison cultures, drugs, and street life in Pennsylvania. The film depicts his family's mixed reactions to his conversion and his being Muslim in everyday life. His aunt described the conversion as a shock because we're Catholic, you know? His mother struggled with the process as well, recalling raising him as Jason in a Catholic school, but also recognized the positive changes she saw in his life after he converted. Ultimately, she admitted, though proud of him in many ways, "My family don't understand what Muslims is." Perez's experience reflects a broader pattern. Family and close social networks are often the primary sites of tension and negotiation for converts, where ostracism and recalibrating notions of being and belonging are most intense. Even after conversion, Puerto Rican Muslims frequently face pressure from friends, neighbors, co-workers, and family for being, quote unquote, too Arab, or for supposedly abandoning Puerto Rican culture in favor of Islam. Adrian's experience exemplifies these challenges as well. A recent convert, when I met him, he was living at his mother's house after going through a divorce. His marriage ended after his wife refused to embrace Islam with him, and his parents also struggled with this choice. His atheist father mocked him, and his Pentecostal mother declared, "You betray Christ, you betray our culture." Whether overt or not, Adrian knew his family and friends did not understand his religious choices. Like other Puerto Rican Muslims, he sought to reconcile all of his multiple identities by crafting what some have called a Borícua Islamidad, an identification that resists full assimilation into dominant cultural norms within Islam, while reimagining what it means to be both Puerto Rican and Muslim at the same time. These efforts include connecting Islam with Puerto Rican culture through language, where there are 3,000 words shared between Arabic and Spanish, thanks to linguistic hybridity emerging out of Andalusian Spain. Architecture, with Moorish and Neo-Mudhar influences to be found across the archipelago, in which converts often go in search of, or which are recalibrated and retooled within the local Islamic infrastructures of the island, or taking some on this example of a mother taking her children on unquote pilgrimage to these sites of Neo-Mudhar or Moorish architecture in Puerto Rico, as well as food and the ecology of the island itself and who we're eating with, and other forms of historical imagination and memory in order to fuse being Borícua with being Muslim. In this way, many describe their conversion, as LeBron did, as a form of decolonization, reclaiming notions of being Puerto Rican from the island's Christian colonial legacy. By creating halal versions of traditional dishes, or invoking historical Islamic influences in local architecture, Puerto Rican Muslims seek to show and make Islam not just present in Puerto Rico, but of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rican Muslims also navigate tensions in predominantly Arab Muslim spaces on the archipelago and in mosque communities in the US, where they are often pushed to the margins, whether explicitly or implicitly. For example, Jose, whom I met during Eid celebrations in San Juan, described Palestinian majority gatherings in Puerto Rico as quote unquote pure tribalism. Referencing the Debka at the annual Eid celebrations in San Juan, food offerings at gatherings, or the politics of local mosques, Jose said that while he respected their cultural expressions and even enjoyed them from time to time, he emphasized that being Arab doesn't make you a better Muslim, and highlighted Puerto Rican Muslims as pure hybrids within the Ummah, difficult to categorize but contributing uniquely to an emergent global Muslim community. Some Puerto Rican Muslims, like others in the US, as noted in the work of others like Serena Gawal, pursue a greater sense of piety or authenticity to counter this through study in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, or institutions like Zaytuna College in California, going to show and to prove that they're more Muslim than the Muslims. Others create alternative spaces for prayer and a sense of belonging and co-becoming. Sumaya, married to an Egyptian and convening a multicultural prayer group of her own in Bayamon, for example, attended events like the All Puerto Rico Eid in 2017, but remained wary of the wider Muslim community due to disagreements over LGBTQI+ issues, highlighting ongoing marginalization and tension within the Ummah itself. Instead, she told me, she would rather eat pinchos and piñones or attend a pride rally with friends than attend an Eid celebration in a convention center with fellow Muslims. Thus, and although uncomfortable to write about at times, I discuss how Puerto Rican Muslims' identifications and allegiances or notions of being and co-becoming emerge through dynamic tensions between adaptation and resistance in relationships with non-Puerto Rican Muslims. While some practices and cultural norms are embraced, marginalization often leads to resistance to dominant cultural identities, producing a distinct Boricua Muslim pride, one interlocutor called Aso Boricua. Referencing the solidarity discussed by Ibn Khaldun and Muqaddimah, the generative friction between the ideal of the Ummah and the feelings of Aso Boricua not only allows American Muslims to push back against the marginalization they feel in local mosques and Muslim communities, but also foster new solidarities, or, in Laviere's words again, to take the accent from the altercation. Finally, I want to speak to their dual marginalization as both Puerto Rican and Muslim in the context of the American Empire. Just before I arrived for fieldwork in Puerto Rico in 2017, students began a university-wide strike at the University of Puerto Rico, disputing actions proposed by the United States Puerto Rico Oversight, Management, and Economic Stability Act, or PROMESA, and its Financial Oversight and Management Board, known colloquially in Puerto Rico as La Junta. To enforce the shutdown at the university, students barricaded the main gates of the campus with delivery pallets, desks, and chairs from the classrooms. If one was following along with the social media hashtag En los Portones or at the gates, one might have caught a glimpse of the aforementioned Adrian laying out his prayer mat for prayer at sunset. Adrian is a staunch supporter of Puerto Rican independence, was an active and politically engaged street artist in San Juan at the time. Known on campus for his striking political paintings, Adrian said he was the only Muslim he knew of at the UPI protests. When people would ask him about his faith and politics, he pointed to a mural on the wall, pictured here, of one of the campus's parking lots, depicting female freedom fighters, one Palestinian, one Chechen, along with flowers, skulls, and a gun sight trained on Carlos Garcia, a prominent member of La Junta, which you can see just above Adrian. His experience in the convergence of his faith and resistance politics helps bring into focus some of the contours of American Muslims' political and ethical self-fashioning in light of their dual marginalization as both Muslim and Puerto Rican in the context of the American Empire. What Boricua Muslim lawyer and human rights advocate Wilfredo Amir Ruiz called an acute intersection of marginalization. Another illustrative narrative is that of Alianza Islamica, founded in Harlem in 1987 by Ramon Ocasio, John Yahya Figueroa, the well-known musician Freddie Ibrahim Gonzalez. The group responded to racism, poverty, and U.S. colonial domination by founding an organization of and for their people, as they call it. As Ocasio put it to me, they began the difficult journey of being Puerto Rican Muslim in a world that had trouble accepting that, both inside the mosques and outside. As they did so, they linked Puerto Rico's struggles to that of Palestine and other global causes for justice, forging networks of both intensely local and expansively trans-regional solidarity and resistance within and beyond El Barrio. Another convert, Ibrahim, also illustrates the transnational and political dimensions of Puerto Rican Muslim identification. Raised to study the oppressed and wretched of the earth, Ibrahim explored global revolutionary movements before encountering Islam, which became both a religious and political act for him. Saying he grew up with the Communist Manifesto in one hand and the Quran in another, Ibrahim said his conversion connected him to global Muslim struggles and fueled resistance to American imperialism both at home and abroad. These narratives, and many more, show how being Muslim in Puerto Rican creates for converts new corrillos, a word used in reggaeton to refer to communities of friends. But in this instance, I apply to the communities of activism and solidarity that situate Puerto Rican Muslims within what scholar Sara Awatani has called transnational networks of anti-colonial and anti-imperial resistance. Or in the words of Puerto Rican Muslim poet Winnie Diaz, with oppression manifest comes insight, Puerto Rico thrust into darkness only to see the light. But Puerto Ricans have hope. We have been in worse situations, battling for independence against imperialist nations. Well, I could share many more stories from a searching Sufi in New York City, Palestinian Muslims and their everyday lives in Puerto Rico, gender negotiations of conversion, or Puerto Rican Muslim sartorial practices. The vignettes presented today, at least I hope in part, provide a brief view into American Muslim life. Furthermore, these stories demonstrate the resilience, creativity, and solidarity Puerto Rican Muslims exhibit while navigating the complexities of being and belonging in a world shaped by colonial legacies and multiple marginalizations. They are, however, just the beginning of a conversation. For now, my sincere thanks goes to Khulud and Frederick, Tom, Una, and others at the Al-Walid Center for putting this together, the University of Edinburgh for hosting me, for you being here today. And I'd also like to thank one more individual who you might have heard of, New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani, who's become quite the celebrity in certain parts of the internet, and especially in New York. But he provided quite the little spike in Google search traffic on Muslims in Puerto Rico after he visited Masjid Montiedra just outside of San Juan shortly after he was elected, pictured here. This is one of the sites in my fieldwork, and there was a bit of attention brought to it. I had, of course, cited early on his father's work on good and bad Muslims in this operational dichotomy. But with him, and then also with Bad Bunny performing at the United States football Super Bowl, there's been a lot more discussion around Puerto Rico and Puerto Rican Muslims. And happy to talk about Mamdani and Bad Bunny today if you'd like as well. But if you'd like to contribute to the conversation beyond this, I put together a Spotify playlist which includes Bad Bunny and other songs that were either inspiring of some of the work I did in the book, or I wrote alongside or along to, or that were songs that were shared with me during fieldwork. So if you're someone who likes to listen to different types of music, you can get a sense of the different mixes that are part of Puerto Rican Muslim life through that Spotify playlist. But most of all, as we look forward to the conversation to come, I want to thank the many Puerto Rican Muslims who shared their lives and stories with me along the way over the last decade. Theirs, as I often tell them, is the story. After all, I am just a storyteller. So thank you and thank them. I look forward to the Q&A and conversation to come.